Hi, this is Jacek from Airis Audio, bringing you today a video about 7 different ways how to get that Swedish chainsaw death metal sound made famous by the Boss HM2 pedal. I have a very vivid memory of when this sound came into my life. I was in the summer of 1990 when I was just a young man. I visited Germany from my native Poland, Hamburg, Germany, and I was perusing, an underground record store there looking for some, punk and thrash records. And the DJ in that store played, first of all, he played the Danzig 2 album, which completely blew me away. And I've become a lifelong Danzig fan after that. But second after that, he played this vile, evil metal album that which sounded unlike anything I've ever heard before. And I was just remember sitting in that store, mesmerized by this gnarly sound that was coming out of the speakers. And I came up to him and asked him, "What is this?" And he showed me the first Entombed Left Hand Path album, and I just bought that thing on the spot. And pretty much a year and a half later, I was completely into death metal, and that's become pretty much my favorite metal genre since then. So I really kind of have a very strong memory of where this came into my life. I'm going to show you 7 different ways, starting with the most basic one, which is an HM2 pedal into a dirty amp, but we'll explore many different other ways to get that HM2 chainsaw sound. And the signal path today, of course, we'll do the HM2 pedal and many other different pedals that can achieve the chainsaw sound. The main preamp I'll be using for the sounds is the amazing Airis Effects HM808. Amazing pedal. I'll be doing a dedicated video on that later. I will be going direct into my DAW for the Euge Valovirta, which is a really amazing pedal for direct recording. And for the impulse response, we'll be using an Airis Audio Bogner blend from my Power Cabs Volume 1 cabinet IR library that I just released a few weeks ago that has 32 different guitar cabinets and 3,200 unique IRs. But let's get right into it. Method number 1. The Boss HM2 fully dimed into a dirty sounding preamp or amp. I not fully distorted, but kind of maybe at the edge of breakup or a little bit more than that, depending on your taste. 2 things will become very obvious. First of all, it's extremely noisy, so we'll have to get a noise gate involved in that. We'll show that later. And second, there's actually a lot of other different tones in an HM2 pedal. It's not just the chainsaw. If you just move the knobs back a little bit, you can get a lot of really good other distorted sounds this way. So when you have one of these, I urge you to check out the sounds out as well. But today, we'll just focus on the chainsaw. Method number 1, the HM2 into a dirty preamp. The preamp of choice for tonight's video will be the Airis Effects HM808, amazing one. This is the clean signal. We're playing this on my Kiesel Vader with beryllium pickups. Those are amazing pickups for metal, even though Kiesel markets them as vintage pickups, which I'm not sure why, because they just sound astounding for metal in my opinion. I keep going back to them over and over every single time. So let's, this is a clean signal. Let's see what happens when we engage the 51 Notice that it's on a low gain setting. Even on a low gain setting, it's pretty distorted. And let's kick in the the HM2, fully dimed, and we all know what's going to happen. Obviously, that is not a usable tone, so let's kick in the noise gate and see what difference it makes. Thank you, ISP Decimator. Always reliable, always works. Amazing tone right there. What is interesting to notice is, even though usually everybody uses a dimed out, there's a lot of variety of tones in here. If you start playing with the knobs and twisting them a little bit, the 51 has so much gain that even if you just change the level a little bit, it changes the nature of the tone. But really the main difference is in the high, because in the last, let's say, few notches here is where the chainsaw tone lies. If you set it to here, well, it's got a bit of chainsaw flavor, but really starts kicking in as you crank it up more and more. and playing with the distortion also, taming it a little bit can help. So that gives you an idea. Also, I think that is my favorite setting actually. Turn back the level and the distortion a little bit. I think that helps to tame the HM2 sound and kind of plays very well with the 51 Filthy. Alright, by the third time I got the pinch harmonic right. In case you haven't figured it out already, I'm a pretty basic guitar player here. Let's crank it up again and let's see when we go full on. Okay, method number 2. We're going to use an HM2 style overdrive pedal. There's only really one on the market right now, but there could be others in the future, which is the amazing Airis Effects HM808. It's basically a tube screamer circuit, but the EQ section has been replaced with the HM2 style EQ section, so it allows you to get you an overdrive to drive an amp with an HM2 style flavor to it. Unlike the HM2, which is a distortion pedal, you would feed this into a fully distorted amp, and that allows you to very easily get a very good sounding, chainsaw style pedal while still preserving kind of the tonal character of your amp's distortion. This is a great pedal. I have it on my 4 metal, pedal board of destruction right here. We'll see that in action. One of the greatest pedals I've ever heard from Airis Effects, and definitely a very unique concept. And I hope to see more pedals like this. So let's try it out. So in the first method, we were using the 51 Filthy in sort of a low gain mode. But for this method, since this is an overdrive pedal that we're bringing in, we'll actually crank up the gain, let's say to 6 on the 51 Filthy to really have it dimed out. Amazing preamp. The way this thing sounds just out of the box with really nothing else into it is just astounding. Like effortless, great tone. Anyway, but we're here for the HM2. Let's bring in the chainsaw. So the Airis Effects HM808 is what we're using here. This is basically the 808 overdrive, tube screamer circuit, but with an HM2 style EQ on top of it. So this is not a distortion pedal, an overdrive pedal driving an already distorted amp, heavily distorted amp, and this is how it brings in sound. Sorry, if you bring it in at full volume. Without it. Let's crank up that bass. I hope this is going to come through in the video, because in the room here, this sounds freaking amazing. This is astounding how good this overdrive pedal is. Really, it basically allows to add an HM2 style flavor to any amp, so it preserves some of the tonal characteristics of your tones, of your amp's distortion, but brings in that chainsaw sound. You can play with the different knobs here. Obviously, as I mentioned, just as in the real pedal, the HM2, most of the chainsaw kind of lies in the last few notches here of the high. So let's see how that sounds. Amazing. Pretty much I like it the way it is. You can try different settings, but I really think that pretty much the low and the gain fully dimed out and the high somewhere around between 3 to 6 o'clock, depending on your taste, is really the best option. Okay, moving on to method number 3, which is the unique Dunn Effects Death Knob pedal, which I also have on my pedal board right here, and we'll see that in a second. That's a pedal that just allows you to blend the HM2 style EQ into your amp's distortion, and usually put it into the effects loop of an amp if you have, let's say, a standalone tube amp. And in our case here, when we're doing a preamp direct recording, we basically have to place that pedal between the preamp and the power amp for direct recording. Okay, we're on to method number 3. This is the Dunn Effects Death Knob. This is a very interesting pedal, very unique idea, because this is supposed to go into the effects loop of an amp. So here we're simulating that layout by basically having it after preamp before it goes into the power amp. This is not a distortion or an overdrive pedal. It's really an EQ pedal that blends the dimmed HM2 EQ settings into your amp's original distortion signal. There's no EQ settings here besides just volume. That's really all you have, and that basically controls the amount of blend this brings in. It sounds noticeably darker, so you'll probably have to adjust the brightness on your preamp to accommodate for that. And it also adds a lot of volume boost as you crank it up, so you might have to crank the volume down on your preamp in order to try to keep it balanced. Well, let's see how it sounds. This is the 51 Filthy cranked, something like this. Let's bring in this guy. Obviously much darker, so let's crank up the brightness a little bit. Quite an interesting idea, very unique pedal. Once again, you can pretty much use it with any amp. It still preserves a lot of the tonal characteristics of that amp. Let's see how it sounds when you crank this thing up even more. It's noticeably louder, so we'll try to bring the volume down here in the preamp. Let's dime it all the way. Turn down the volume a bit down to accommodate for the huge volume boost that this adds. Pretty ingenious idea. I think I like it most somewhere around here, probably. Again, so that's the Dunn Effects Death Knob, meant to go after your preamp's distortion and after its EQ tone stack, and be used in the effects loop or between a preamp and a power amp like the Seymour Duncan distortion, or in my case, the amazing Hughes Stompman, which I'm using for all the direct recordings here with my Anaclasis Audio Bogner impulse response. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Method number 4 will require some blending. And this is where we get into the history of how the Entombed sound was actually accomplished. Although the most typical way is to, do a fully dimed HM2 pedal into a dirty amp, that is not actually how the original Entombed album was recorded. What they did, and there's a great video on this topic, which I'll try to post here or here, depending wherever YouTube will allow me to place a link. Basically, they blended two parallel signals together. One was an HM2 into a PV Bandit solid state, amp, and the other one was a DS1 distortion into a Marshall amp through a 4x12, I presume. So two very different signals. They will basically, double track each of them. So they'll have 4 guitar tracks, 2 of them with the HM2 chainsaw, 2 of them with a regular, Marshall amp with a DS1 distortion, and that gives you really the sound of the Left Hand Path album. And we're going to try experimenting with this type of idea of blending different signals. And for this method, we're going to try the KMA Tyler mix pedal. This is a very interesting pedal that basically allows you to split the signal from your guitar into 2 separate independent paths, like a low-end path and a high-end path. So we can basically put, let's say, the chainsaw pedal into the higher frequencies, and then a regular distortion, distorted preamp into the lower frequencies, and blend them together as one sound using this type of pedal. So let's see how that works.
Okay, let's go on to method number 4, which is where we're going to delve for the first time into signal blending. And the reason for this is because in the original Entombed recordings, they didn't just record the HM2 into a preamp or an amp. They basically blended 2 completely separate signal paths together, recorded as separate tracks. So the first track was an HM2 into a PV Bandit solid state amp. And here we have the Master Effects Marauder preamp, which is basically a recreation of the PV Bandit circuit. And in the second path, they had I think a DS1 distortion to a Marshall amp. I'm going to try to find a video on the topic, and maybe I'll post the link somewhere here, wherever YouTube lets me to. And we're of course going to be using the 51 Filthy for the regular distorted tone amp. So at the core of this is the very unique Tyler frequency splitter pedal from KMA Machines. This allows you to basically have 2 separate effects loops, one for high frequencies, one for low frequencies. And you can mix with high-pass filters how much they bleed into each other or not at all. So let's, in this case, we're going to just invoke the high loop, which is the HM2 with the Marauder. And without any filters, it sounds like this. So we're going to bring in the high-pass filter, and then it's going to sound a lot more thinner because we're going to be filtering a lot of the lower frequencies. And we're going to take basically just the high-end frequency distortions for this signal. Now let's look at the lower end of the spectrum, which is where the 51 Filthy is. This is it completely unfiltered. Now we're going to bring in the low-pass filter, so we're going to filter out the high-end frequencies of this signal. So with that, it sounds like this. And now we blend the 2 together. You can play with, of course, the tone stack of each of these paths. You can also do the mix here to basically tilt it more towards the high end or the low end of the frequencies. So if we give more of the 51 Filthy, sounds like this. We start bringing more of the HM2. Or mixed in 50%. Maybe we'll take off a little bit of the edge of the Marauder.
So we're arriving on method number 5, which is a variation of what the previous method that we just did. We're also going to try some blending, but using a different approach. We're going to use the AEHX parallel trimixer. That is really a parallel mixer that allows you to mix 2 signals in parallel without any sort of filtering of high-end or low-end frequencies between them, but it runs them full in parallel. So you can really blend it, and then you have to play with the tonal stack of each of the independent paths, like the HM2 chainsaw path versus, let's say, distorted preamp path, and try to blend them together using this.
Okay, we're on to way number 5, which again also deals with parallel signal blending, but using a different mixer, the EHX tripolar mixer. Unlike the KMA unit, this one doesn't have the ability to filter out by frequency. It will basically blend the full frequency spectrum of the two different signal paths. When you switch it on, you'll hear the clear signal, which we don't want any of the clear dry signal going in, so we're gonna set that volume to 0. We should get nothing. And now we'll switch on the HM2 signal path, which is in the loop here, 2 here. And then we switch on loop number 1, which has the 51 filthy in it. Sounds incredible here in the room.
Method number 6 is really basically stepping outside of the comfort zone of the Boss HM2 and trying out different chainsaw style pedals, which are not just pure copies of the HM2, but bring their own ideas and their own tonal, stack and own EQ options. There's many of these. My favorite by far is the Lichtlaern Audio Medusa, just from Germany, just because it has a built-in effects loop, which we'll use in the subsequent method, and also has a built-in noise gate. Has very powerful EQ sections and even has 2 separate modes. But there's also the KMA Worm 2, which I have here as well. So we'll hear both of them soon. There's the KMA Dead Stack pedal, which is out of production, but you can still find it. Even the old school DoD death metal distortion pedal can be configured to sound like a chainsaw, and we'll try all of that as well. So each of these pedals will give you the chainsaw sound, but a different flavor of it. And it may, different than what just the Boss HM2 can do. So worth checking out. So let's try how that sounds.
As well. But here I have a sample of other pedals that are not marketed as HM2 style pedals, but they are very much capable of achieving an HM2 style tone if you push it in the right territory. So here's our clear signal with just a dirty amp on the 51 filthy. Let's take the legendary or infamous, whichever way you look at it, death metal distortion from DoD. Capable of its own, flavor of HM2. Here's the KMA Dead Stack, which is a fuzz distortion hybrid. If you push it into a particular setting, also capable of doing HM2. Here's this heavy air splitter, which is also supposed to be a fuzz pedal, but if you push it to the edge, it's very much capable of giving you a crushing HM2 style tone. So I hope that gives you an idea that you can expand and go outside of the comfort zone of this legendary guy and go into other directions, because every one of these, and there's countless pedals like this, that if you push it to the edge, it definitely can give you a bit of a chainsaw tone to it, and try something different that is unique and your own.
So we're on to method number 7, which is blending different HM2 pedals together. And this is possible thanks to the Lichtlaern Audio Medusa pedal, because it has an effects loop in it, where you can put another pedal and then mix the tone of the HM2 chainsaw sound from the Medusa with a different flavor. Doesn't even have to be a chainsaw, it could be just a different overdrive or distortion pedal. I've been playing around with it, and I love the combination of the Lichtlaern Audio Medusa with the KMA Worm 2. The Medusa has 2 modes on it, the classic and the modern. So the KMA Wurm 2 is more like a classic HM2 style, and the modern has a different flavor. And when you blend them together, I find it really finds a very harmonically rich, distortion tone. Again, kudos to Lichtlaern Audio, because it's the functionality they thought of building into the Medusa, which probably seems like an overkill at first. Who would put an effects loop into a distortion pedal? But they had the imagination to come up with that idea, and honestly, I love it. It's one of my favorite features of that pedal, even though I didn't think about it at first when I bought it. But once I got it and started playing around with it, my mind opened to all the different tonal possibilities that it brings. And it just, plain out experimentation, just put a different pedal, any pedal you want, HM2 style or not, and blend it with the Medusa, and you can get a lot of very interesting and unique tones that are going to be yours and only yours, and not just a straight up copy of some other band's sound.
So, blending HM2 pedals. For this section, we've brought back the Anaclasis Audio pedal board of doom that I have here, which is 6 different overdrive pedals, actually 7, well, I'm talking about 8 different overdrive pedals with the 51 Filthy and 2 different HM2 pedals before it. So this option is possible thanks to the Lichtlaern Audio Medusa, which is a brilliant pedal. Basically, the part of it that is so unique is that it has an effects loop here, in which I have the KMA Wurm 2 HM2 pedal, which is an also amazing take on the HM2. Each of them have quite a different tonal characteristic, and this one on top of that has a toggle switch here for like a classic HM2 tone versus a modern, so we can mix a modern HM2 with a classic and play around with them, and it creates a really powerful, harmonically rich combination. So with everything off, we have the 51 Filthy set to dirty. With nothing else engaged, we're going to bring in the Lichtlaern Audio Medusa. Right now it's in the classic mode. Let's switch to modern. And this is the blend knob here on the Medusa basically is set to only have the Medusa in it, but if you switch it to the other side completely, then we go to the KMA Wurm. The brilliant part about this, which I also should mention, is that the Medusa has a noise gate built in, so the default noise gate I have on my entire pedal board is off, and with just the noise gate that's built into the Medusa, the whole thing is dead quiet. This is an amazing pedal, really. I can't say enough good things about it. And here we can start playing with the blend knob about blending these two tones together. So I'm going to set the Medusa to a modern HM2 tone, keep the Wurm 2 on a classic HM2 tone style, and blend the two of them together. Well, as you can imagine, the range of options here is nearly infinite. You can put any pedal into the effects loop of the Medusa, any of the HM2 style pedals we've seen today, or even a regular distortion pedal, or an overdrive pedal. Really do anything you want and mix the signal of the raw Medusa with the signal of the other pedal and form something unique. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little section, and we still have one bonus method left. More on that in a second.
Well, here we are, nearly at the end of the video. Thank you all who lasted this long. I have, as I promised, I have a bonus 8th method here, which is to basically put an overdrive pedal in front of any HM2 tone you have, because it definitely changes it. If I'm playing something doomy or sludgy, I wouldn't do it. I like the loose, gnarly low end of the typical HM2 sound. But if you want to play something death metal-y, in my opinion, putting a very good overdrive pedal in front of it really tightens it up and makes it even more defined while still retaining some of this nastiness that the HM2 chainsaw sound is famous for.
Fresh, let's engage the JHS Bonsai pedal and the TS10 mode. And without it, sounds noticeably different. Any interesting, good overdrive pedal that you have should work. Here I'm going to bring in the SD1 legendary overdrive. Without it, with the SD1. Well, obviously any pedal, overdrive pedal will work. Again, lots of room for experimentation. This brings us to the end of our series. I hope you found this interesting. If you've lasted this long, I hope you'll subscribe and help this channel out and like the video. And I'll see you guys next time. Lots more videos coming up on this channel, so stay tuned.